Update. My boyfriend fed turkey giblets to my parents' dog after they told him not to, among other rude things. Original post. We've been together since January, so about 10 months. 22 female and 29 male. He kind of has a pattern of being weird or childish in situations involving food. I found myself very embarrassed by how he acted at Thanksgiving with my family today and want to know if I'm being too harsh or dramatic. The first thing was that when my mom was about to start preparing the turkey for roasting, he stuck his hand inside it and pulled out the little bag with the giblets. She asked what he was doing. He asked if he could give them to the dog. She said no, they don't feed him anything besides dog food, as they don't want him learning to beg when they're eating. He then got a knife and fork and started dissecting bits of the giblets on the counter, staring at them up close and touching them. I had to remind him to wash his hands. All the while, my mom, brother's girlfriend, and I were trying to actually get stuff cooked. He didn't offer or ask if he could help at all, and just hovered around, picking at things and being in the way. I could tell my mom was annoyed. At the dinner itself, he commented out loud several times on food he didn't like. Not just politely turning it down, but comments like, "Ew, I hate gravy," and "This stuffing has onions. Onions are gross." He asked what type of cranberry sauce there was, and then said, "Oh, that's the gross kind." My family definitely noticed. They looked uncomfortable. My mom even offered to make additional food if he wanted something else in particular. He said he was fine with what was there, but then hardly ate anything. My mom felt bad afterward, and I had to reassure her it wasn't her fault at all. Toward the end of the meal, he left the table. I figured he was just getting something or going to the bathroom. My dad got up shortly after. He later told me that when he went into the kitchen to bring out dessert, he found the dog eating the giblets from earlier off the floor, and my boyfriend in the act of scraping a pile of food from various dishes into the dog's bowl. My dad said he was giggling to himself as he did it. WTF. He was explicitly told not to feed him people food, and then did it in secret like a child, and even got caught like a child. I have never seen another adult do something like that. Then, back at the table for dessert, he loaded his plate with 2 to 3 times as many sweets as everyone else took the first time they were being passed around. About 90% of what he ate was dessert. When cleanup time came, everyone, including my elderly grandparents, volunteered to help except him. I had to ask him. He did a half-assed job and kept inspecting the turkey carcass, pulling bones apart and making a mess of it. My dad, irritated from the earlier thing with the dog, which I now know about, snapped at him to either put it in the fridge or leave it alone. He went back into the dining room and ate more pie while the rest of us finished cleaning up the kitchen. Overall, I am majorly embarrassed by his behavior. I feel like the mom of a little kid, except a kid wouldn't know better. I shouldn't have to correct the behavior of a grown man, right? And before you ask if he was just anxious about meeting my family or something, he's met them all before several times. Even if he hadn't, that wouldn't explain it, because he's done similar things before in front of his own family and when it's just the two of us. I am tired of the weird way he acts around food, tired of worrying if he's going to get weird looks from other people. As someone in my 20s, I shouldn't be getting reports from my parents that my boyfriend did something rude and immature. They questioned whether I felt like he was on my same level. I feel like I'm generally happy with him, and then things like this pop up, and I remember he has this other side that really turns me off. He's older than me, but I feel like I'm the older one sometimes. So I guess my questions are, how important is this? Is there any chance he'll grow out of it, and what would help that happen? And how would you recommend I bring it up to him? I don't feel comfortable bringing him around my family again unless he acts normal, so I can't just pretend nothing happened. Now for the top advice before reading the update. You've been with him 9 months. He's demonstrated that, despite the fact that he's pushing 30, he's a giant man-child, and the dog feeding was a huge middle finger to your parents. Why are you with this person? Man-child is being kind. There wasn't anywhere in her description that indicated the adult man part. This guy is just plain childish, and that's being kind. I would end it over the dog thing. It's not just about begging, it's about pancreatitis. That could kill your dog, or at least cost several $1,000s in treatment. Dogs' digestive systems are set up to basically handle one major protein at a time. When you add new proteins and fat, dogs can get very ill. I mean, it was disrespectful too, but Jesus, mess with my dog and you're out. 20-some years on and off in vet med, and holidays like this are just chock full of emergency pancreatitis. The rest is also ridiculous. He's almost 30, not 13. He is acting like a toddler. This would be a deal breaker for me. Sorry. I didn't know anything about this. My parents got the dog after I went to college. They joked he's their replacement kid, haha. So I never grew up with dogs or have any myself. This is horrible to think about. I am so glad my dad stopped him in time. I'm even more pissed now. Now for the update. I've broken up with him. I talked about it more with my parents yesterday and realized that if I'm embarrassed to honestly answer their questions about my relationship, then that's a bad sign. I found myself trying to give a bunch of excuses to make his weird behavior seem less bad than it was. I also outright lied a couple of times about other things in our relationship. Eventually, this got exhausting, and I just confessed that I'd messed up and had no good excuse. My mom asked what I thought would be best for me. The answer at that point was obvious. I also left out some details when I wrote my first post. I guess I was too embarrassed to give the full picture. I want to provide it now as a kind of confession, but also because I can now more clearly see how freaking weird this man was, and just want people to validate that after I spent so long in denial. The giblets he fed to the dog? He fished them out of the trash bin to do that. My mom had thrown them away after he cut them up and made a mess on the counter. He would have needed to dig through the freaking garbage to find them again. My parents found chocolate bars missing from the cabinet. Those were not part of the dessert that was available to everyone. We think he snuck them at some point, like a little kid. His general diet is atrocious. It's like what a 5-year-old would eat, except I know there are tons of kids who eat way better. Pizza, chicken nuggets, pasta, fries, chips, grilled cheese, mac and cheese, Lucky Charms and other sugary cereals, ice cream, candy. Not a single thing that isn't white, beige, or some hideous artificial shade of orange or yellow. Whenever I'd try to share my food or get something else for him, he'd snap at me angrily. He doesn't have a job. I know. Fully expecting to be raked over the coals for ever accepting that in a partner at this age. When I finally admitted it to my parents, they were like, "Are you serious?" I'd told them he was in school and living with his parents to save money. He actually was thinking about going back to school, which never took the form of any action, and lives with his parents because where the heck else can he live with no income? I guess I thought I could help motivate him. I thought that's what you do as partners, support each other like a team. Now I can see there never was any team. It was just him doing what he wanted. Because he was broke, I also ended up paying for most of the stuff we did together when we went out. Some people asked about the part where I said he did similar weird food things with his family. You guys wanted to know how his family reacted? They didn't. They either pretended not to notice, or else thought it was normal. I'm not sure which. He did things in front of them like blowing bubbles in his drink, cutting grains of rice in half with his fork over and over, and eating ice cream directly out of the container instead of spooning it into his bowl. There was one time his parents were going to take all of us out to dinner, and when discussing which restaurant to go to, they eliminated a bunch because they didn't have anything my boyfriend would eat. His mom would sometimes serve him a completely separate meal if whatever she'd made for the family was something he refused to eat. Sex was also weird. I won't go into details besides that. He won't reciprocate things I do for him. So that's pretty much that. I'm unspeakably embarrassed I ever dated this loser. The sad thing is, if not for my parents insisting on talking with me about it, I'd probably still be dating him for who knows how long, thinking this is just what it's like. Well, it doesn't have to be. I'm very grateful they helped me see that he wasn't normal. Thanks for all of the comments on my first post. Seeing that consensus also made me realize I needed to leave. Next story. Update. Am I the a-hole for following through and surrendering my ex's dog after he ignored deadlines? Original post. I am 23 female and recently ended a nearly 3-year relationship with my boyfriend 24 male. When I finally ended the relationship, I told him I wanted him out of my home by the time I returned later that day, and he packed his belongings and left of his own accord. I have since been criticized for being too harsh, especially regarding his dog and unresolved financial issues. So I am looking for outside perspective on whether my boundaries were unreasonable. When we first started dating, we had already known each other for some time and had an established level of trust. At the beginning of our relationship, he had just lost a job he had held for about 4 years. Over time, he moved in with me, and we agreed that once he found and retained a job, we would split expenses evenly. That never happened. From that point forward, I took over all weekly expenses, including rent, utilities, groceries, transportation, and general household costs. I continued covering everything, partly because I needed to keep my household stable, and partly because I wanted to make it as easy as possible for him to focus on finding work. Over the entire relationship, he held 3 jobs total, lasting a combined 6 or 7 months. The rest of the time, I was the sole provider. Over the course of nearly 3 years, I feel I consistently went well beyond my fair share to maintain stability in the relationship. Despite repeated efforts to be patient, supportive, and reduce pressure so he could contribute, the responsibility never became balanced. About a year ago, I ended the relationship after discovering he had been messaging other women online trying to meet up. We were broken up from November 2024 to February 2025. During that time, I felt more independent and less stressed. We eventually reconciled after he promised to apply for jobs consistently and contribute financially. As we approached nearly a year since reconciling, none of those promises had been kept. Over the past month, as it became clear that nearly a year had passed without follow-through, I clearly communicated that I needed to see effort, even something as basic as applying for jobs online, because I was struggling financially and emotionally. Nothing changed, and I became burned out. During our relationship, he brought his dog to live with me but was always clear that the dog was his, not mine. I accepted the dog into my home with the understanding that he was present and responsible for the dog's care. When I ended the relationship and he moved out, the dog remained with me temporarily. I agreed to care for the dog until the food ran out, or until the new year to avoid putting the dog in a bad situation. Communication around the dog has been inconsistent. He does not currently have stable housing and has asked for extensions without providing concrete dates. The dog escaped once by opening a sliding glass door, which required me to kennel him for safety. I work very long hours, typically 56 to 70 hours a week, and during those hours the dog must remain kenneled. He is not used to a kennel and cries for long periods, disturbing my sleep and my neighbors. I do not believe this is a fair or sustainable quality of life for him, and it made it clear that keeping the dog here long-term is not in his best interest. So I told him clearly that I cannot have the dog in my home past December 31st and asked for a plan by December 29th. If he or a family member cannot pick the dog up, I said I would move forward with rehoming the dog or surrendering him to a shelter so he can be somewhere stable. There are also unresolved financial and property issues. During our relationship, he lost a phone his parents had paid for at a friend's birthday party I attended. I purchased a replacement phone on my own plan because I felt responsible and wanted to help. The phone and service are in my name and cannot be recovered even if the phone is returned. When he moved out, he took a television that belonged to him and a Puffco device that belonged to me, which he claims was a gift. I offered clear options to resolve this fairly, either return the Puffco and television if I continue paying for the phone and service, or pay the remaining phone balance of $525 and take over the account so it is no longer in my name. I asked for a response so we could close this out, but I have not received one. There is also an unpaid ticket he received while driving a car in my name, which remains on my record. That car was later repossessed because it was the only bill I could delay without immediate consequences in order to keep my housing and utilities current. At this point, I feel that I set clear boundaries based on my capacity, finances, and responsibility to my household. I am trying to resolve these issues in a way that avoids further instability or harm, even though that means making difficult decisions. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments before reading the update. He sounds like a cheating loser mooch, so not the a-hole for breaking up with him. However, I would check your local laws regarding the dog and financial issues, so you can avoid breaking any laws. I will say that depending on where you live, you may have broken the law by kicking him out the same day you asked him to leave. In many places, you have to go through a legal eviction process to remove someone from their home because it was his home too, even though it was your place. He's already left my home on his own accord. The dog is also registered to me in my county because my ex was too broke to pay for registration even though it's required. You got yourself a hobosexual. Go to small claims court for any property or money of yours he is holding. If December 29th comes without him picking up the dog, proceed with rehoming or surrendering the dog on January 1st. Cut the leech out of your life completely. You will realize so much peace by doing that. Not the a-hole. Now for the update a week later. I am posting this as an update because I've followed through on what I said I would do, and I am still being told I was wrong for not continuing to extend myself. Zeus is my ex-boyfriend's dog. When we separated, he left Zeus at my home, and communication became limited almost immediately. I work long hours, already have my own dog, and was clear from the start that I could not care for Zeus indefinitely. I gave my ex multiple verbal and written notices that I needed a concrete plan and a firm pickup date. I clearly told him I could not keep Zeus past December 31st. This was communicated more than once and in advance. I did not move the deadline or surprise him. Instead of a plan, I received repeated requests for more time with no timeline. He told me he was saving for a kennel and supplies, but also told me that if he picked Zeus up, the dog would have to live outdoors in a makeshift setup because he is not allowed to have dogs indoors where he is staying. Zeus has been an indoor dog his entire life. There were also serious practical and safety issues while Zeus was under my care. Zeus escaped my home a total of 3 times because he can open doors. Each time I had to stop everything, search for him, and wait for him to be found and returned by Good Samaritans. In total, I missed over 16 hours of work dealing with these incidents. On one occasion, I chose not to kennel him because I felt bad, and he had explosive diarrhea throughout my home. I had to deep clean my carpets myself and ultimately dispose of my $200 carpet cleaner because it was contaminated with feces. This was not a minor inconvenience. It caused financial loss, health concerns, and additional stress on top of an already overwhelming situation. Zeus also has an untreated yeast infection in his ears. That was identified months ago while my ex was still living with me. Initial drops were tried and did not resolve the issue. After that, no further veterinary care was pursued. I was not financially or logistically able to take over medical care for a dog that is not mine, especially while working 56 to 70-hour weeks. I gave my ex a final deadline and told him clearly that, if I did not receive a concrete plan by that date, I would move forward with surrendering Zeus so he could receive proper care and be placed somewhere stable. He did not respond by the deadline. I followed through and surrendered Zeus to the Humane Society, which is a no-kill facility, so he could receive medical care, supervision, and a stable path forward. I informed my ex afterward. I did not abandon the dog or leave him unsafe. I took him somewhere equipped to handle his needs. Only after this did my ex respond angrily, saying he just needed more time and accusing me of being unreasonable. At that point, the decision had already been made after weeks of warnings, deadlines, and escalating issues. This was not done out of spite. It was done because continuing to wait with no plan, repeated escapes, property damage, untreated medical issues, and an unsafe proposed living situation was not fair to the dog or to me. So, am I the a-hole for following through on a boundary I clearly communicated and enforcing it when nothing changed? If he really wants the dog back, he can go to the Humane Society and get him back. Did he? Not the a-hole. He was notified of the surrender location and did not follow up. At that point, the responsibility was no longer mine.